it's lots of people's laziness of not knowing how to cook.
Yeah.
I mean, it's stupid. Mine, I was in the same job for about 30 years. That sort of thing doesn't exist.
We exploited a lot of their labour to make ourselves rich.
Hi guys, I'm with Sam.
Andy.
Nice to meet you guys. The first question I would like to ask is, should the UK reduce immigration, increase it, or keep it the same? Let's start up with Andy.
Actually, I'll go further because I'm inclined to think that the arguments that are being put forward now in some quarters about remigration are necessary now because we've got to a point where before the camera started, I was saying when I was born in 1955, we had a fairly homogenous society ethnically. It was 98% white English in England, or what I like to say, white Northern European. That's the ethnicity. Now I think it's something like 73% English, with some Northern Europeans like Poles and Germans and those, bringing up the white population about 85. Now, every country is different. England, if you like, Britain, has had, as Sam pointed out, successive waves of migration throughout its history. Some of them extremely violent. You mentioned the Normans. Well, that was a small minority who replaced the ruling class and then went to persecute and slaughter thousands of people over the country until things settled down about 300 years later. So that's not a very good advertisement for migration or multiculturalism.
It's not, but that's not what's happening now, is it?
Yeah, I'm just saying that you use that as an example. But
yeah, and what I was saying about that is we've had Normans and, from Norway and Celts, and we're as a population.
Because this is an argument that's often put forward.
Yes.
So if we note them, so if you go back to the Romans, now there were migrations before that. You had people like the Celts, the Amnaya, the Beaker people, that stuff. No, okay. Let's start at the Romans. They found basically Celtic, that's Northern European peoples who, since their culture, have been pushed to the western fringes, like Wales. The Romans came and went. They stayed for about 400 years. They didn't leave a huge impact, either genetically or linguistically. They built some fine roads and set out some cities. Great. And then, after that period, when the Roman authority left, the country was open to immigration from basically around Northern Europe, so that's why the Anglo-Saxons turn up. Yeah. And again, it was a kind of filtration of people, and they tended to be wealthier, they tended probably more warrior-like, they replaced the existing ruling class who were pushed out. Then you had the Scandinavians, that was very warlike. Yeah, for about 200 years. 100 years. And then you had somehow one of our greatest leaders, King Alfred, defeated the Danes, made peace with them, turned them to Christianity. And so by that time, the genetic mix of England was pretty much set as Northern European, Anglo-Saxon, Celtic and Scandinavian. Then we had the Normans, who I referred to before. They conquered the country. They replaced the ruling class again. They slaughtered a lot of people during that period of establishing their rule. And for 200 or 300 years, the kings of England spoke French, basically. They were French. They saw them as that part of the culture. But they merged eventually. Since then, the biggest is probably the Huguenots, who were expelled from France in the 17th century because they were the wrong religion.
I'm descent of.
Oh, you're great. Yeah, I mean, this is the point.
And this goes to show, and we are indistinguishable, and I think that is the same as what is happening with the current migration.
No,
just because they look slightly different.
Very different.
We all look very different, actually. The English population has always looked very different because of the different culture, ethnic identity. It's very different to a nation such as Japan, for example, which is very ethnically homogenized, and they do look similar for that reason. But English people, you get a wide range of faces, and for me, that just shows that ethnicity doesn't really matter to nationality for me. I think culture matters to nationality, and that's why anyone really can come in, can adhere to the culture. We don't want too many people coming in, I don't think, because then it's going to be...
many?
Well, I couldn't put a number on it. I'm not a politician. I don't know how many would be, because we've got to balance the line between what's good economically and what would tear the fabric of the nation apart by having too many cultures.
So you're agreeing with some of my points?
But what I'm disagreeing with is that ethnicity matters. I think anyone can come in here. We're all mentally the same, and anyone can come in and help to grow our culture. For example, national dish of the UK, obviously, tikka masala, isn't it? or is it a vindaloo? I can't remember. But it's a curry basically. Anyway, they've enriched our culture. You know, you go to places in South London.
Like curry.
I love curry. So,
anyway,
but that's just a personal preference, isn't it? And you know, you go to places in South London. You know, you get some amazing restaurants that just, you know, and then like jerk chicken becomes integral to our culture, I think. And just these other cultural institutions become part of us and enrich our culture while we also keep our own culture.
So you've given the curry argument for multiculturalism,
yes, I have.
And that's it. That's your prime argument. Now, against that, I'd say that Northern Europeans have created one of the greatest set of cultures the world has ever known. You think about our language, our music, our cathedrals, our social organisation, our governance, these things, the science, the technology we've granted to the world.
I would say you'd say that because you are a Northern European.
Well, I'd say it's objectively true. We've given the world the ability to get out of, you know, peasantry, slavery, all that sort of thing. We spread it around the world. Now we have countries, bless them, like China, Japan, who are building on that, and they're becoming powerhouses of technology.
Why do you
whilst we sink, because all civilizations rise and fall. Yeah.
You're saying that we as Europeans have been able to eradicate slavery across the world, which is true, which is amazing that Europeans have done that. I would say that's more because we as Europeans are perfectly placed on the map to bring in riches from across the world, become very rich ourselves. Yeah. I don't think that's got to do with how good our culture is, or the culture has been sort of created by our richness, right?
Well, it was only specific countries within Europe that, you know, sort of pushed this spurt of scientific and technological advance and exploration in the 18th
they've
century.
Also done that. Before that, they did it in the Middle East.
Yeah, and then I mean, I'm saying all civilizations rise and fall, but you know, the Middle East, a lot of countries are sitting on vast quantities of oil, for example. Yeah. Which what do they use them for? For lighting mosques. I mean, nice, but there are many other uses. They gave them examples of how to run a country. So I'm not.
Do you think?
Can't resist.
Do you think immigration is helping or hurting the UK as we speak right now?
I think undeniably, no matter what side you're on, immigration is helping the economy of the UK right now, and that is mainly because of the economic structure of this country that we were left in after World War II. The empire fell. We've got an economy that's reliant on immigrants. I don't think you can disagree with that, right?
Well, first of all, you picked up the economy.
Yes.
I mean, it's not just about the economy.
It's not just about the economy, but I'm saying you agree that economic...
No, I disagree. Targeted immigration of people where the skill shortages, yes, and all these immigrations should be on time-limited contracts. So if we're short of nuclear scientists or doctors or engineers, first of all, you have to ask the question why. First of all, you have to ask the question why. There's currently 70 million in this country. A lot of those are immigrants. I'd say comfortably we ought to be at 50 million. Now, a country of 50 million people in the past has pioneered the Industrial Revolution. We've pioneered welfare. We've invented the computer, more or less. We did a lot of nuclear power. And yes, true, there were quite a few talented people came from abroad, but the bulk of that is they came from abroad because Britain's a good place to do it. Now, I don't think a country if we perceive a shortage, say, in medical staff, then the workforce planning people in the NHS, where I used to work, should work out why. Why are we not paying people enough?
Oh yeah.
And also, the other question is: if we're importing nurses from the Philippines, have they got a surplus of nurses? Is it not immoral that we import skilled people from other countries who might need those people more than we do? Now, the other thing is, an awful lot of people who do come across are fueling this dark economy and also the Uber economy. The cyclists running around with boxes on their back. Now, okay, I'll say that part of that is lots of people's laziness of not knowing how to cook.
Yeah.
I mean, it's stupid. Why on earth would you trust some shed somewhere in the suburbs and a bloke on a bike to deliver stuff that is your sustenance and your health? No, we used to cook for ourselves. Let's go back to that. Let's take care of our health, live a bit more simply, and we won't need all these people. Now, in terms of the economy, just to tackle that, the measures that we're told, such as GDP, what is that? Gross domestic product. Yeah. That is of no interest to any individual. First of all, because it's a meaningless and flawed concept. For example, if you employed me to dig a hole and fill it up day after day and pay me £50 a day to do it, that would all add to the gross domestic product. People getting ill and then being, through their own obesity or whatever, and then being treated by the NHS, that's all adding to the GDP, so it's meaningless. The other meaningless is gross GDP is again, it is for the whole country. That's of interest to the capitalist class, the people who run the corporations. They see more money flowing around, and they, that's what they're about. If you're going to use GDP, then GDP per capita is the one that's of interest. Now, a lot of people's experience is it's been stagnating or declining. Cost of housing, ability to get around towns. I mean, I'm okay because I'm retired and I get a gold-plated pension, but not everybody's in that position. So for an awful lot of people, and also the other thing is, again, this affects your generation more than mine. I was in the same job for about 30 years. That sort of thing doesn't exist. I got a pension at the end of it, a public service pension. Now, that was under an economy that was post-World War II up to say up to the early 90s. That's the economy that kind of worked. Now we don't have that anymore. Well, somehow we were able to afford it. What's gone wrong?
Well, I think you've thrown a lot of things at me there. It's very still on. But I think I'll go back to the point that you said that we, as a small country, managed to build amazing things and do amazing industrial development. I would say that's because we exploited and raped a lot of the world, and raped a lot of the world of their wealth, right?
You don't rape somebody of their wealth. You might trade with them, and
raw resources and stuff are just in the ground. They're not being used. They're not being utilised. Often people would just walk by them.
We exploited a lot of their labour. To make ourselves rich, you walk around London. Marble Arch over there was not built off of our own wealth as a country. That was built off the will.
No, I think it's
okay.
This is just between us two. We're filming this for YouTube. Yeah. No, if I can answer that.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll just finish my point, right? And then since 1945. Obviously, we've lost all of our empire, and we've had to restructure to a new economy where we could rebuild ourselves, rebuild our houses, rebuild our NHS, off of the work of immigrants that have had to come over to help us do that. The Windrush generation helped us rebuild, and since then, I think we've maintained that economy. Whether we should go back to an economy where we're more self-reliant is another debate. I think we probably should, to be honest with you. We need to be making more doctors in our own country. We shouldn't just be having quotas of doctors that go to university. However, I think you can't say that we're ever going to go back to empire days.
I wouldn't want to.
No.
In fact, America's got our old empire, so good luck to them. And look what state the world's in now.
Yeah.
Empires are generally a bad thing when they're exploitative. I absolutely agree with that. But it's not a black and white issue. I mean, if you dive around a bit in the literature on empires, I know there's a lot of very politically motivated people, particularly on the left, who want to portray the British. Now, when you say that, it almost includes us. And I'm not included in that.
No.
I've looked into my ancestry. A lot of them were abolitionists. They worked with William Wilberforce. Literally, they were up there with William Wilberforce.
Yeah.
Now, when you go back to exploitation, my great-great-grandfather was a coal miner. In Durham. Now, if you've ever seen pictures of coal miners crammed into these lifts, shooting down like that, crawling for 5 miles on their knees, dying at 50, I mean, is that white privilege? No.
I'm not.
The point I want to try and make is that yes, people around the world were treated badly by empires of all types.
And we were treated badly by rich people as well, and that's always been the case, and that always will be the case.
But also, why single out the British Empire? You've got the Ottomans, you've got the Chinese, you've got all these empires around the world who generally, for the lowest of the low, the peasants, at times were not very nice places to live. The British at least lifted people out. A lot of countries, gave them infrastructure. They gave them examples of how to run a country. So I'm not saying it's all good. I'm just saying it's not as bad as it's painted.
It's not as bad. There's good and bad stuff for the empire. But anyway, we're getting very far away from the topic of migration.
I wanted to return to the original question.
But what I would say, I'm going to go way back to when you said that about about the Western culture being the best culture.
I'm biased.
Unbiased.
No, I'm biased.
Yes, you are biased.
Actually,
and I would say stuff like
I disagree with myself if I did say that. I think
you can say democracy. Obviously is a good thing. whether you class that as Western civilization, Western
Athens.
culture or not. Yeah, it probably is, to be honest.
Not
with
many
you.
though.
So sorry guys to cut you short. I wanna ask.
Yeah.
You could make this into a 10 episodes.
Honestly, this is not my new show. And is life in the UK harder now than it was 5 years ago? How would you
For
respond?
me, I got no idea. You know, I was like,
I think it's not. I don't want to sort of criticise your question, but the trouble is, it's very personally dependent. Like I said, for me, I'm still healthy at 70 years old. I've got a pension which keeps me going, so I don't have to go to work. So it's much better. It's much better. You know, I can travel. I've got hobbies and all that kind of stuff. I come to Speakers Corner. However, when I compare my prospects when I was your age, which I guess is early 20s, I don't know.
yeah, a little
maybe
bit
I'm-
younger, but yeah.
No, whatever, doesn't matter. Sort of, Zoomer. Am I right? You think you classify yourself as Zoomer, but it doesn't matter. But the point is, my understanding is your prospects are not what mine were, and I'd say probably from that point of view, no, it's harder because
suppose so.
you don't have the possibility of a job for 10 years, 20 years, 30. You've not got no possibility of a gold-plated pension like I have. It's probably harder to raise a family because housing costs, particularly in London, are so steep, and women are going kind of, well, try not to be too controversial, but more difficult, let's say, in some ways. And there's all these gender ideology stuff that you have to deal with. Life was a lot simpler, although in my teens I was getting into that sort of, the downside of liberalising all these laws was that you end up with tolerating all sorts of behaviour that is toxic to the health of society. So I think to answer your question, yeah, for me, no, I mean, it's fine, but generally for Sam's generation, probably not.
I've got no idea. You know, I was just playing video games 5 years ago. I mean, it was COVID 5 years ago. That was pretty horrendous.
Well, that's
but
a good point,
you know,
it is actually a point that before we started filming that we were just mentioning that essentially every generation finds the world as it is.
yeah.
So I've been through several generations, so I can compare. Now, when you're my age, you'll be able to say either it was bloody awful back then because now we have fully automated luxury communism, i.e., the machines do all the work and everything, everything's free. Or it may not be. I don't know. I hope it is the former, but you just don't know. So only then will you be able to sort of take a more of a bird's eye view.
Yeah. Well,
Perfect. Honestly, thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, it was fun.
thanks.
Andy.
Andy.
Sam.
You got the wrong way around already.